Welcome in to another video with A Spiral continuing the NFL divisional breakdowns, preseason rankings. And we're continuing in the East, but this time moving into the NFC. The NFC East, or as NFC East fans like to say, the NFC Beast, which actually is more likely the NFC least. I'm sorry, these are really bad jokes. We're feeling real corny today, guys. We're gonna go right into the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys. Going through these divisions, we're gonna talk about the offense and defense, the positives, negatives, the whole thing. So we're gonna start with the offense and what is the 16th best quarterback in Dak Prescott. Just kidding. Um, Dak Prescott, to me, if he was not a Cowboys quarterback, I think he would be one of the most adored and loved quarterbacks of the current generation. He's so good at what he does, which is just continuously lead top 5 passing offenses when he's fully healthy. He has great weapons in Pickens, Lamb, and honestly, Flournoy and Turpin have been beneficial. And Jake Ferguson has just continued to be a very beneficial or a beneficiary of having two great weapons on the outside. He gets a ton of checkdowns and a ton of passes, and he's been great for fantasy and even better just in a safety blanket role for this Cowboys offense. Dak Prescott is one of the more accurate quarterbacks in the NFL and also one of the true field generals that's in the NFL for a quarterback. He's up there calling all the protections, making any kind of audibles, and really has full control of this offense, even with the coordinator changes that he's gone through. This offensive line is probably one of the better O lines in the NFL. Tyler Guyton, Tyler Smith, Cooper Beebe, Tyler Booker, and Terrence Steele. They got the three Tylers. I know they want two more so bad. Trevor Keegan is on this team. Shout out. Didn't realize he was traded to the Cowboys. Anyway, Tyler Smith is probably one of my favorite guards in the NFL currently. He's so good. He's such a mauler. Has great footwork and just looks like an absolute animal on the field. And this offensive line in general is one of the better pass protecting offensive lines, which is why this pass game has been so good recently. And they just continue to go back to the well and re-up on offensive linemen. They started having a little bit of a down offensive line maybe 2-3 years ago, and they just went back to the draft and drafted guys and continued to improve on this offensive line. Javonte Williams is what he is, which is a good plotting, semi elusive running back, but more of a downhill runner, especially after the ACL tear. But really had a bounce back year, and I think it was a benefit of this offensive line and passing game that Dak had, like the season that he had last year. Seeing Javonte in an offense and seeing this, I guess, running game play to what they know it could play to with a good running back. They had Rico Dowdle, and as much as I think Rico Dowdle is like a good backup, maybe low end starter in the NFL, Javonte is much better and showed that with this offensive line and this offense as a whole. Moving on to this defense that made a ton of additions this last year, and I think I really like a lot of the additions they made. I think that the Quinnen Williams and Kenny Clark additions help their run defense, which has been abysmal for so long. And adding those two last year and then continuing to add good run defenders in Rashawn Gary, I think are very beneficial to this team. I like their pass rush potential in Ezra Raku and Malachi Lawrence. LT Overton James Houston. Like they got a lot of names here that I've liked in the past on what they could be or the future of what they can be. Especially guys like Lawrence and Overton. I thought Lawrence was a bit of a reach, but he has the physical, the physical traits that you look for in a tier one edge rusher. Maybe not the true bend, but he's big and he's athletic, and he kind of reminds me of a young Rashawn Gary. And then Ezra, who had a pretty good year last year and continued to show flashes of what he was coming out of college, which is a true light speed rusher. Their linebackers, I really like DeMarvion Overshone, the Sweat Bandit. Shout out Bengal. Didn't know that's what he was called when he played at Texas, but that's hilarious. Apparently, he used to wear a ton of sweatbands. And D Winters is was a pretty good linebacker for the 49ers last year. My one gripe with him is I think he tries to hit his head and use his head like a weapon, like a linebacker from the 90s, which is fun to watch, but man, he's going to hurt himself, dude. He just comes down like crazy and tries to throw his face into every guy's chest, which, I mean, it ends up working a lot of times. But I think he does lack in the pass defense game, and DeMarvion Overshone's just a freak athlete. Hopefully, a second year back from that gruesome injury, he'll look even better than he did. As for this defensive back room, Savon Revel, whatever you say his name, I think could really step into a role this year. I really liked him coming out of college, and I think that maybe another year in this defense and he'll look a little better. Jalen Thompson played on a horrible team last year in the Arizona Cardinals, and I don't know a ton of him because I wasn't, plugged in on the Arizona Cardinals, but potentially, they went out and signed him. They're really going all in this year, and I think that it could potentially be a good signing. As for Malik Hooker, I think that he is a pretty good safety, a good starting caliber, and Deron Bland, you really hope that he can get back to what he was maybe 2022, I believe. But that is yet to be seen, and you hope that with this improved defensive line and run defense that the passing game can continue. And then we haven't even talked about my favorite player in this DB room, which is Caleb Downs. He's been talked up as this generational safety, maybe not generational, but all-star safety that is going to potentially help this team really snap into line on this defense. And people say that he looked slow when he played in college. I think that he came out and said that when he was playing in college, he felt like he had to play slower because things took so long to develop for him. So I wonder if the NFL speed is just going to kind of click with him right away and he's going to show up and show out for this defense. Overall, I'm a really bullish on this team. I think that they did go all in, and I know a ton of people hate the Cowboys. You got to hate Cowboys fans, but there's a lot of players on this team that I really, really enjoy and really like to watch play the game. So we will move on to our next NFC East team in the New York Football Giants. And the two absolute demon white boys in the backfield in Jackson Dart and Cam Scadaboo. Little white boy got motion in Jackson Dart. He's good, man. I mean, people were hating on this draft pick coming out of college, and he did nothing but show out and show why he was, rightfully taken where he was taken at in the first round. I think that his running game opens up an extra gap. I think he's actually one of the better running quarterbacks in the NFL, probably a top 12 running quarterback. He needs to learn how to play to his skills and not just look for contact. He needs to protect himself a little more if he wants to stay being a professional football player for a long time. I really think that he started to click in the Dable offense, but I'm really concerned about how he'll look with Matt Nagy as their offensive coordinator. I really don't think Matt Nagy is worth any amount of money you give him as an offensive coordinator. There's a reason why the Chiefs let him go. As for Scat, I love Scat. He's so fun to watch. He is the epitome of a concrete muncher. Like, dude just eats players for breakfast, lunch, and dinner on the field. He turns every chance he gets into a chance to put someone in the dirt with his forehead and a stiff arm. And the dude's contact balance is insane. He may not have the greatest breakaway speed, but if you can get a running back that gets 6 yards a carry, like that's a first down every 2 carries. Obviously, that's not how football works, but the point is you have, basically 60% of your first down on any given rush from a running back. That's you will take that over a guy who can break away one every once in a while, but on average, like, can't break a tackle and goes down right away on first contact. I have seen him. He looks healthy from what I've seen on, him doing a backflip at the Fanatics showcase or whatever it was. Please don't hurt yourself. Stay healthy. I want to see you play next year. And then Malik Neighbors has had a very weird knee injury. It was an ACL and I believe a few other things, and he had to get it cleaned up. So I highly doubt he plays more than 6 games this year, if at all, which looks very scary for this wide receiver room. Darius Slayton's always injured with a hamstring. I actually really like the Darnell Mooney pickup. I think that he's like a legitimate wide receiver 2 or 3, depending on how good the scheme is. But I think he could be a wide receiver 2 in this offense if Malik Neighbors comes back. After that, I mean, Calvin Austin, Juju Smith-Schuster, shout out Odell Beckham, still trying to do it. Isaiah Hodgins, Braxton Berrios, Jalen Hyatt at the bottom of the depth chart. Like, this is just a bunch of random names. Like, if you had this wide receiver group in 2018, wow, you're looking great with Juju. I don't even know if Juju was in the pros by then. I mean, that's my point. This, after Malik Neighbors and Darnell Mooney, I think this wide receiver room is just a bunch of random names. I really don't know what they're going to do. Malachi Fields is a low top end speed, but like a big wide receiver and go up and get the ball out of Notre Dame. I do like this tight end room in Isaiah Likely and Theo Johnson. I think they're going to be running a lot of 2 tight end sets with Harbaugh in there. They went out and got Likely, but Theo Johnson is like Jackson Dart's dude. So I really wonder who will end up being a bigger target. And I wouldn't be surprised if they both lead the receiving game until Malik Neighbors comes back in this offense. They went out and got Pat Ricard. I really do have a feeling that this offensive run scheme and just offensive scheme in general is going to look a lot like how the Ravens do. A lot of heavy personnel run game and play action off of it with some deep shots to guys like Slayton and Mooney up the sidelines. I like this offensive line. John Michael Schmidt is a pretty good center. John Runyon's has played good. Jermaine Illuminor has been, a positive when he's healthy, and Francis Mainoa has been, a highly touted offensive guard and a high pick. Andrew Thomas is the biggest question mark. Can he stay healthy? Because when he's healthy, he's one of the best tackles in the game. No question about it. It really comes down to Matt Nagy. Like, is he going to be worth anything as an offensive play caller? He had a few good years with the Bears and with the Chiefs, but ever since that 2018 Bears team, they're off. Any kind of offensive scheme that he runs is bad. And so I hope that it really doesn't hurt Jackson Dart's development or this offensive potential when Malik Neighbors is healthy. Moving on to the defense, though. Potentially one of the best defensive lines in the NFL with Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Shelby Harris, DJ Reader, and Darius Alexander. Like those six guys are pretty awesome. I think DJ Reader's like he's a little older, but I still think he's a good defensive tackle. Darius Alexander was a highly hyped up Toledo defensive lineman that ended up falling kind of out of the first few rounds, but I still think has like pass rushing chop potential. Onto the linebackers in Arvell Reese, like extremely high pick. Tremaine Edmonds like had his ups and downs last year, but still I think is a pretty good linebacker, like probably a top 16 linebacker in the NFL, maybe top 20. Micah McFadden was injured last year, but I thought that he, like when healthy, was a very good off-ball linebacker. And Jack Kelly, I think, is kind of in that same boat, like a good when healthy, and if he needs to get in to play. Where I have problems is this DB room. I really like Paulson Adebo, and I still think Javon Holland can do it, and is going to be a good player. After that, Greg Newsome got traded last year to the Jaguars and was abysmal and got cut. And Tyler Nubin has been one of the worst safeties in the NFL, like legitimately as a starter. And he's, yeah, being a second round pick, like I think it's sunk cost fallacy. Really hope that he develops and shows a little bit of why he was drafted so highly, but he really hasn't shown all that much to continue to be a starting safety. They did pick up Colton Hood, so I think that he could maybe step in for Greg Newsome. I'm not a huge Deontay Banks. He has not shown much. But other than that, I think this defense overall is probably league average. I think that their pass rush could be exceptional on third downs. Their run defense could be a little suspect. Brian Burns is a pretty light edge rusher, but Kayvon Thibodeau's really been coming into form, and you hope Carter can take another step and kind of lock in this year. As for this team, I think the biggest thing with this offense is when does Neighbors come back, and can Matt Nagy get any kind of actual offensive scheme out of this team that looks like a modern day NFL offense? From what I understand, he's one of the lowest motion rates in the NFL, which typically does not bode well for your team, especially with an older play caller that is very run dominant on first and second downs, and tries to quote unquote stay on schedule with the sticks. But I think that it may not be a great outlook with Matt Nagy, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone in a year. I think that it kind of came down to a name than it was a actual coaching prowess for hire. Moving on to the next NFC East team in the Philadelphia Eagles. Here is another team that literally it seems like it comes down to offensive coordinator. They have one of the better defenses in the NFL and probably a top 10 defense, probably top 5, maybe even number 1. Like really, I want to start with the defense on this team. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Moro Ojomo, like those three guys, pretty sick. Yeah, those three guys on the interior, like Ojomo really kind of stepped into that left Milton Williams role, and I think that he's played really well. Jordan Davis got a big contract, and he played extremely well last year on it. And Jalen Carter has been one of the better defensive tackles in the NFL since he was drafted. The question is, why doesn't he have an extension? Like, does Howie know something that no one else knows and is going to maybe let him walk? I don't think they'll actually let him walk. For their edge rushers in Nolan Smith and Jonathan Grenard, I thought the Jonathan Grenard trade was exceptional for them. If you get anything of a healthy Jonathan Grenard before he, got hurt, you're getting a 10 to 12 sack guy who is a very good run defender when healthy. I thought Jalix Hunt played pretty well when he got in last year, and Arnold Ebiketie is a pretty good pass rusher. AJ Epinesa being on this team now is another good just run defending edge. They have two of the best interior linebackers in the NFL, Zach Bond and Jahad Campbell, and I think that those two guys really carry this defense when it comes to knowing scheme and knowing where to have guys set up and putting everyone in the right place. And this DB room added one of the best lockdown corners, maybe not the smartest or most disciplined, but one of the best lockdown corners in Tariq Woolen or Reek Woolen in the NFL, alongside Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, who already are two of the better corners and nickelbacks in the NFL. I like Marcus Epps and Andrew Makuba, but I just need to see more out of Makuba specifically. And Marcus Epps is, I do think Marcus Epps is a pretty good safety. So maybe that him and Makuba, if Makuba takes another step, they'll be fine at safety. I did think losing Reed Blankenship was a tough loss, but I kind of understand why they did it. He wanted a lot of money. And yeah, this defense is, I think could legitimately be the number one defense in the league if you get a healthy Grenard and a good pass rush from these guys. And some guys really kind of lock in, specifically Jalen Carter, to get that next contract. Moving on to this offense, Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, Devontae Smith, Mekhi Lemon, Dontavion Wicks, and Dallas Goedert. I think this offense has the makings of a really, really good offensive scheme. You have one of the best prospects to ever come out of college in Devontae Smith, in the sense of won the Heisman, won the Blitnikoff, like one of the only wide receivers to ever do that, is finally getting a chance to be a true 1A in this offense. And for as small as he is, I think that he is an extremely winning wide receiver at the catch point. He's got strong hands and he really goes up and attacks the ball when it's in the air. So maybe moving him to the outside to kind of replace AJ Brown along with Mekhi Lemon in the slot, and Dontavian Wicks, who they picked up in free agency, I still think is a good wide receiver 3 for depth in this offense. Dallas Goedert's getting old, but they did just re-sign him, and he's been a big scheme point in their offense recently. A lot of, shuffle passes on basically what would be a motion him across and turn into almost a run game scheme. And Eli Stowers was a big draft pick for them, being a giant tight end, but more of a wide receiver, kind of like a Colson Loveland type. He's tall, lanky, athletic, can go up and get the ball, but he is a converted tight end semi recently, so you can kind of see that when it comes to any kind of blocking that he has to do. So I wouldn't be surprised if he plays a big slot, or maybe they even motion or move him out to play outside wide receiver with how big he is. Mekhi Lemon was my number 2 wide receiver coming out of this year's draft. I thought that it was Cardell Tate, Mekhi Lemon, and then Jordan Tyson, just because Tyson's injury history. And Mekhi Lemon in this offense, if Jalen Hurts can throw over the middle and this offensive coordinator and Sean Mannion can really get him to do that, I think that he will explode his first year. I really do. For this offensive line, if it's healthy, it'll be good. The problem is Landon Dickerson has been fighting back injuries for the last few years. Lane Johnson was hurt last year. I believe Mailata was even hurt last year. And Jurgens and Steen really, I don't think Steen's really all that good. Send him to Dallas, get them another Tyler. No, I'm just kidding. But my point with this offensive line is the running game goes as the offensive line goes, and if the offensive line can't stay healthy or really takes a step back in offensive scheme, well, I don't think you can really take a step back from anything that they did last year with their offensive coordinator, whose name is slipping my mind, thankfully, because he was so bad. But they did lose their longtime offensive line coach that was like not in on what was going on. So who knows what's going to go on there. But Saquon Barkley is still one of the top 3 running backs in the NFL. And behind a healthy Eagles offensive line, I think he could end up potentially being another rushing leader and winning the rushing title again this year. I don't think he's lost a step. I think him and Genti were two of the biggest losers when it came to, like, it's a stat where it's like offensive line whiffs, where basically just any kind of run game, if someone basically just whiffs on a block right away, they're having to make up for said whiff block. I think Saquon and Ashton Genti were two of the biggest, I guess, they had to deal with it the most last year, more than any other running backs in the NFL. And I think that really showed with Saquon Barkley's efficiency and production last year. And I think that if you get, again, an offensive coordinator that doesn't just go Saquon up the middle twice and A.J. Brown deep ball, like, I think we're really going to see a bounce back year from Saquon. Moving on to this final NFC East divisional team in the Washington Commanders, and Wade and Daniels and this plethora of offensive running backs that are all running back threes. Washington Commanders, and their offense is a very interesting offense. I really like their offensive line. Tunsil could potentially be a Protector of the Year winner. I liked the Chris Paul draft pick a few years ago. I was surprised they let Tyler Biadasz go. I think Sam Cosmi's been a net positive since he's been on this team, and Josh Connerly has started to pick it up at or at right tackle in this offense. I think this offensive line is going to be very beneficial to whoever ends up being the starting running back. The problem with the running backs is Krosky Merritt can't catch the ball to the backfield, which I think is going to be a big reason why Rachaad White might get a lot of early down or third down and maybe passing down situations. And if he performs better than Krosky Merritt, he may just end up being the workhorse in this offense. Draft him in fantasy, please. I like Krosky Merritt, but I think that he lacks a little bit what is desired by this offense, which is a true 3-down back, which is why I really thought that if they got Jeremiah Love, it would have been awesome for this team. Jaden Daniels, hopefully he's healthy for this whole season. I thought that he looked pretty inaccurate in the games that he played last year. I thought that he was maybe getting a sophomore slump, and teams were kind of figuring him out. Not figuring him out, but I think the Cliff Kingsbury offense was getting figured out, and he just wasn't playing very well in it. But you hope that with a new play caller and, a consistent offensive line and maybe a running back that steps out, I think Katron Allen could potentially take over some of the timeshare in this running back. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 3 running back system. You hope that he can take a step forward. The problem with taking a step forward is Terry McLaurin's 1 year older. He was not very healthy last year. And after that, you have a rookie, Luke McCaffrey, Treylon Burks, De'Ami Brown, Jalen Lane, like just a bunch of Van Jefferson, Jacoby Jones. Shout out Jacoby Jones. Not the real Jacoby Jones, or the one that I'm thinking of, but shout out Jacoby Jones. Anyway, after Terry McLaurin, if he's not healthy, this wide receiver room looks really brutal. Treylon Burks kind of showed some receiving chops last year, and I wonder if he can maybe step into a bigger role in this offense, and Antonio Williams, could come out, and maybe this offense really kind of focuses on getting him the ball early and often to get him going. But we have no idea what this offensive scheme is going to look like. Offensive coordinator in David Blau, which could be interesting. He played in Detroit most recently and was there with Dan Campbell, so maybe he takes a lot of the Dan Campbell ideas and principles and really turns this team into kind of an offensive powerhouse that Detroit has been recently. Moving to the defense, they gave Odafe Owe a bag. Kayvon Chason was a pretty good edge rusher for the Patriots last year, and I liked the Joshua Josephs pick for their pass rush. I thought that he was, pretty dang good. I like both the Leo Chenal and Sonny Styles pickups in the draft and in free agency. Leo Chenal is like a very downhill run, kind of old school, smaller run defending linebacker, and then you have a freak athlete in Sonny Styles, who I think could be a generational linebacker prospect, like as good as Luke Kuechly potential. This defensive line, Javon Kinlaw's kind of shown a little bit the last few years, especially with Commanders last year. And De'Aaron Payne's been pretty good since he's been in the league. Like he's been a top 20 defensive lineman or defensive tackle. Frankie Louvu's getting old, so I think we're really going to see him start to be phased out. And moving to the corners, I think Sandra still really got picked on at times last year. And I think it's because, he was put in a tough situation. So Trey Amos being their other corner, they are very young at cornerback, especially if Amos is healthy and plays this year. But it says he's out, so who knows what that will end up being for them. I like the Nick Cross pickup. I think he's a pretty good safety. And Amik Robertson in the nickel, along with Rasul Douglas, is pretty good. I don't know anything about Quan Martin. Apparently, he's been their safety for a few years, but I don't know much about him, which isn't a good or bad thing. It just means he's kind of a middling safety thing. So, as bad as this defense was last year, I think they've made a few positives and some good moves and, gotten better. But I still worry about it overall. Maybe Dan Quinn's defensive scheme can put these guys in the right situation. I do like Jerzon Newton, and I think that he can, if he can step into a bigger role, that him and Payne will be awesome together. Finally, what you all have been waiting for, if you have not liked or subscribed yet, please do that. It really helps out the channel. I don't say this often, but I really appreciate you guys for watching this. It's, again, something that I just like to do, something that for me is really fun and keeps me engaged in football, especially in the off season. It can get really easy to not care, and this just kind of keeps me locked in and better prepared for what I'm going to watch next year. And I'm really excited to be filming videos for you guys in a true full NFL season, which I got big plans for, guys. Finally, the moment you all have been waiting for. The final rankings for the NFC East for 2026. I know it says NFC East positional tier list. Don't worry about that. Don't worry. I'm not doing that. Starting off at number 4, unfortunately, as much as I like the New York Giants and a lot of the players on that team, I think that their defense hasn't shown a ton, and Harbaugh has just shown that his defenses do not play well to start seasons. Their offensive coordinators, Matt Nagy, and they have Greg Roman and just a bunch of guys whose offenses have not been good in the past, especially not recently. And I really worry that without Malik Neighbors, and you get Cam Skattebo coming off a pretty gruesome ankle injury and an offensive line which their best player is constantly hurt and out, you kind of get a middling dud of an offense and potentially one of the worst offenses in the league, especially without, a young mind coming at it with a new look, and you get a begrudging old offensive coordinator that does what they think is the only way to win, and it ends up probably not working because the defensive schemes have evolved. And so, unfortunately, I do have the New York Giants at last. Next up, I have the Washington Commanders coming in third. As much as I think that Jaden Daniels should be healthy this whole season, and I like their offensive line, that's kind of where it stops. I love Sonny Styles, but I don't think he's going to be enough. I like some of the other defensive moves, but I still don't think the defense as a whole has improved enough to carry this team. And I think their wide receiver depth after Terry, if he goes down, is just quite abysmal. The running back room, who knows what it's going to be. Like behind this offensive line, it could be really good, but I still worry that you don't have, like, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt was a 7th-round draft pick. Rachaad White is on his second team, and Katron Allen was an extremely late draft pick as well. Like, these aren't highly touted players. You hope that you can get kind of a good singular production out of the three of them combined. But I just don't think it's going to end up happening this year, especially with how top heavy I think the NFC East is right now. And speaking of top heavy, I have the Cowboys at number 2, but not by much. And the reason I say not by much is if you look and compare the top two teams, which are going to be the Eagles and the Cowboys, the Eagles' defense is much better than the Cowboys' defense. Yes, I completely agree, but I can see a path to the Cowboy defense being much better than it has been, especially in the run game. And their offense, the Cowboys' offense, has shown that it can win games with shootouts. And the Eagles, as of the last, or I guess last year, with a really bad offensive coordinator, was abysmal. It was, I mean, abysmal is not the right word. It was like middle of the pack, which is not good for what the Eagles have shown in the past. But with the leaving of their offensive line coach and their offensive line getting older and not staying healthy, and Jalen Hurts showing a very disdain to throwing over the middle and lack of running talent, or not lack of running talent, but lack of running prowess last year, I worry that if everything goes right for the Cowboys and a lot of stuff goes wrong for the Eagles, that the Eagles could not, beat out the Cowboys. Here's the thing, though. Their defense, I think, is so good. And with Vic Fangio staying there, I think the Eagles' defense is better than the Cowboys' offense, where I can't say the same potentially about the Cowboys' defense and the Eagles' offense. And the Eagles have shown that if they get the right offensive coordinator, that their offense can be exceptional. And with the right scheme and Saquon Barkley coming back, potentially with a bounce back year if their offensive line stays healthy and a better scheme, and Jalen Hurts willing to throw over the middle, who knows how good this offense could be. It could be, top 5 with their receiving weapons and, again, a great scheme that could potentially come from Sean Mannion, but who knows. So, each team's biggest storylines this year. Eagles, how is their offensive scheme going to look? Again, I keep harping on it, but how is their offensive scheme going to look and how is it going to change from last year? Is this team's offense going to be better or is it going to be another carry game by the defense? The Cowboys really comes down to, are they really all in this year and is it going to benefit them? I think they made a lot of improvements on defense and this offense is going to be top 5 again with Dak at the helm as long as he's healthy. I think we really needed to see what Caleb Downs can be, if he is going to be as good as they say he is coming out of college. Is Malachi Lawrence going to end up being worth the pick they spent on him? Number 3 is, can Jaden Daniels show that what he did his rookie year is not a fluke and that he is going to be back and better than ever in a new scheme with David Blau? Is this defense going to take a step forward and really start to come into its own, especially like Sonny Styles? Is he going to be the guy? And can Terry McLaurin stay healthy and help out this wide receiver core that I think is lacking in true star power? But the biggest one is definitely Jaden Daniels. And the Giants is, can Jackson Dart and Cam Scatteraboo stay healthy for a whole season? Can they not be constantly in the blue tent with concussions? Can Jackson Dart come back and show that he knows how to protect himself in the NFL? And is Malik Willis going to be like healthy and play at all this year? And then for the defense, I think it comes down to, is this hype train for a pass rushing team finally going to hit and just actually be one of the scariest pass rushing groups in the NFL, which could easily benefit their DB room, and their defense could end up being awesome with a lot of guys that I think are very above average starters. Eagles 1, Cowboys 2, Washington Commanders 3, and New York Giants 4. That is how I have the NFC East rounding out for next season. But that's just the opinion of a ball knower. See you later.